Welcome to a special edition of the Ed Morrissey Show. I'm happy to introduce my guest, Jim Newberger, who is the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate, running against Amy Klobuchar here in the great state of Minnesota. And Jim Newberger is a state legislator who has stepped up to challenge in a race that a lot of people think is a foregone conclusion, but I think Jim is going to dispute that. And last night's debate, I think, gives him a little bit of a platform to do that. Jim, first off, great talking with you again.
Oh, thanks, Ed. It's great to be on your show. It's always an honor to speak to you. And we're coming off a really good debate last night. It was on the ABC affiliate. It's KSTP Channel 5. It's on their website if your listeners want to take some time later today or tomorrow and watch it. But it went real well. We started this race about 16 months ago, and folks told us that you'll never win. You're down 30 points. Why are you doing this? This is not a good use of your time. And we myself and my team, we just put our noses to the grindstone. We're on this path. This is the path that we're gonna complete. And we've worked really hard. Oh, my goodness. I've put on about 60,000 miles on my car in the last 11 months alone, just in Minnesota, going everywhere. But what's interesting is when we first started out, we were down by 30 points. 30 points. And today, we're between 8 and 9. We have gained at least 21, 22 points on Senator Klobuchar in the last 16 months, and it is going so well for us. In fact, we had a number of debates that were scheduled, a series of them over the entire summer and fall, and we did the first two debates. We did Farm Fest, which was in the summertime, June, July area, and then we did the State Fair, Minnesota State Fair, and she really underperformed. She did not do well. The next 9 debates, the next 9 events, she declined. She canceled. She would not debate me. In fact, she had declined in this one that we did yesterday on Sunday. She said, nope, I'm not going to do it. Well, there was a lot of pressure put on her, and she finally had agreed to do a pre-taped event earlier in the day that they broadcast. And suffice to say, it's very evident. Have your listeners watch the debate. Sometimes it's very evident that she's not the powerhouse that people want her to be. And I really took her to task on so many issues, especially with education, with health care, immigration, taxes. We just ran the whole gamut. And her voting record, and what we really wanted to let folks know, is that Senator Klobuchar is not the moderate that people say she is, or that she wants people to believe she is. She has a 90% rubber stamp voting record with the far left, your Chuck Schumer Democrats.
Right.
And at the end of the day, we were able to expose that. So we did really good. Very pumped after last night's debate.
I haven't talked to you since the State Fair. In fact, it's been a couple months since I've had a chance to talk with you, or a little under a couple of months. And so, I mean, the movement here has been interesting, and there's been a lot of movement up and down the ballot too for Republicans across the state. And I saw the results of the poll there from Star Tribune, and your ballot partner Corinne Housley seems to be creeping up pretty close to Tina Smith too, and so. Oh yeah, that's good. That's good news. And if the Star Tribune if the Star Tribune says you're down by 10 points, you're really up by 3. So if the Star Tribune says that Corinne Housley is creeping up on Tina, it really means she's blowing her away. Yeah, we've run across that before in the Strib polls too. I mean, we've seen this for years. Is that the Strib polls tend to and the reason why they do that is they overpoll the metro counties and they underpoll the outstate counties.
Oh, exactly.
And so
exactly. I had a good discussion with a Strib reporter recently, and she was giving me the whole rundown on why their polls were so good and why I should really put stock in them. And I asked her, I said, well, let me ask you a question. When you run your polls, the majority of the time, you're calling people with landlines. And she said yes. And I said, well, what's the demographic of people who have landlines? There are very few people that are under the age of, I would probably say, 40 or 50 that have landlines. most folks have cell phones. And I said, so, and that's not even a good slice of the demographic, because you've got some folks that only communicate or primarily communicate through internet, through text messaging or email or Instagram or Facebook. And I told them, I said, the only way you're going to get an accurate poll, a truly accurate poll, and I had this exact talk with Rasmussen out in Washington, D.C. last week, and he agreed. I said, as if you go and you hit, you take a percentage, you say we're going to go to all 8 congressional districts, and we're going to hit 20% landline, 20% cell phone, 20% instant messaging, 20% Facebook, and so on. You fill it up so that you get every media type, how people are talking. I said that is the only way you're really going to get an accurate poll, especially amongst millennials. And she looked at me, she's like, "Yeah, you're right." And I'm just thinking, wow. So as far as the polls are concerned, though, we do try to go with the more we do try to lean more on the more respectable ones. And suffice to say, if you go to the more respectable, trustworthy polls that don't have a bias, we're doing amazingly well.
And this is, we're a couple of weeks away from this, and I said this during the state fair too, is that even if this looked like a very daunting race, and it did, I mean, this looked like a very daunting race, the Republicans really needed to nominate somebody of substance to run against Amy Klobuchar, because A, you never know, and B, you have to make sure that you don't get somebody who just flips in and steals the party endorsement because nobody else was running, and then you run into all sorts of troubles. We'll get into that some other time. But yeah, so yeah. I mean, we should all be grateful that you were running for this, even on that basis. But yeah, you're performing well. Things are improving. Let's talk about the debate. You've kind of touched on a number of things that happened in this debate. In Minnesota, do you think that the Senate race has been nationalized? And do you think that last night's debate reflected that?
I think that parts of it have been nationalized. I think that they're definitely trying to do something about Tina Smith. I think that that whole part has been that's lower hanging fruit.
Right.
But as far as our race, I think that the dominant left-leaning media culture has been trying to protect Senator Klobuchar as much as possible. And at the end of the day, it's not working. The more that they try to protect her, the more that it seems to be backfiring on her, which is why we're just going to keep plugging along. And we have started to get a little bit more national attention, especially because we've climbed so much. We've performed so well on a shoestring. Senator Klobuchar, she's got about $6 million to spend. I've got under $250,000. That's nothing compared to her. But if you go back, this has been done before in Minnesota. If you go back to Wellstone versus Boswich, we had a situation there where he was outspent 6-1 as well. And he turned it on its head. Why? Because Wellstone had a better message than Boswich at the time. It resonated with more people. And he was able to turn that. And I've got that same fire. I just do, Ed. I am so fired up. We're 16 months into this, and most of the time people are just absolutely, they're wiped out. They're just tired. And, I just get so energized when I'm around people, when we're out interacting with folks. We can flip this thing around, and we've done it on a shoestring. We were the number one vote-getting campaign in the primary. There were 4 of us running it, 3 opponents in the primary, and we got over almost 203,000 votes. The next closest vote getter to us was Karen Housley, I believe, if I get my numbers right, and it was 185,000. And all of our outreach was internet. It was all digital media, that kind of thing. We didn't do any radio. We didn't do any TV. We did a little bit of print. We did some free, and we did some earned media on TV. But as far as purchasing stuff, we just went strictly social media and strictly by internet, and we smoked it. We did so well. We outperformed everybody, and we're just encouraged. We have such a good presence online that we're keeping that up. So we're doing a lot of radio now too, statewide. But we're just reaching out, and a lot of retail politics. 400 miles every day. That's what I average.
Wow. That's an awful lot of driving, but that's what it takes, and because the state is not just the Twin Cities. I mean, it's all over the place.
Correct.
It's and we're seeing that now. I mean, when we talk about the state of Minnesota, obviously the Twin Cities is important. You have to be competitive in the Twin Cities, but but it looks to me, a couple of weeks out now, it looks to me that Republicans are making inroads in some of these districts that have been long held by Democrats. Minnesota's first congressional district, certainly the 8th congressional district, where Pete Stauber seems to be running away with that race, and the Democrats have largely, the national Democrats have largely pulled out to put their money elsewhere, and maybe even in maybe even the 7th CD, where Dave Hughes is running against Colin Peterson, although we haven't seen any polling from that. I mean, what's your sense when you're going through there? What are people saying about Minnesota politics? What are people saying about the tension between Republicans and Democrats in some of those outstate districts that you're spending so much time in?
Yeah, we should perform really well in Greater Minnesota. The 7th congressional district was 32 points for Trump.
Yep.
And I'm really excited for Dave Hughes. I think we'll be able to finally retire Colin Peterson. The 8th, we're going to win that. We're going to do really well up there. Down in the 1st with Jim Hagedorn, I honestly believe he's going to pull us off. He's looking so strong. The rest of our seats, we know Eric Paulson. He's got a challenge, but he's Eric Paulson, and he's like Rocky. Every time you think you've knocked him out, he gets back up. So I'm very encouraged for Eric. Lewis, him as well. I think him and Emmer will be just fine. The other in the 4th and the 5th, those are going to be some challenges that we've got going with Greg Ryan and Jen Zielinski. But overall, our strategy for the Metro, we're doing really well. We got official endorsement from the Chinese Minnesota Association. These are about 40,000 Chinese. These are our first generation immigrants that came from socialist China, and they got no time for the democratic message. They've had a belly full of socialism. These are the conservatives that the Republican Party has been looking for, and they've endorsed my campaign. With the Latino culture, with those folks, really big inroads, especially on life issues, because Senator Klobuchar is so radical when it comes to abortion, and that just completely turns off the Hispanic and Latino populations. In the Russian community as well, we reached into the Russian immigrants that have come in. We've made really good inroads there. But at the end of the day, most people vote their pocketbook.
Yep.
And the Trump tax cuts and the health care issue, those are the two things that are going to get people to say, you know what, Amy, I can't afford you.
Let's talk about the tax cut issue here, because I saw this earlier today, not necessarily Minnesota, more of a national thing, which is the suggestion that the Republicans' sales pitch on the tax cuts has largely flopped, and that they don't know how to sell the tax cuts. I mean, based on what I see, people are pretty happy with the tax cuts, especially with the way that the corporate tax cut, or tax reform, I should say, because it was really a tax reform on the corporate side, more of just a tax cut on the personal side. How that brought money back into the United States, how that incentivized investment here in the U.S. And I'm not necessarily sure that I agree that this wasn't the sales job flopped. I hear people talking about this, and I hear people talking about the fact that they don't want to have to get a tax hike as a consequence of this election. Are you hearing that too? Is that a big topic among voters that you meet with?
It's a huge topic, and this is the dynamic that we're seeing with the Trump tax plan. First of all, for family farms, we were really able to drive the message home that the Trump tax bill repealed the death tax. And for your listeners who might not be aware, that if you had property and you died and you wanted to keep it in your family, you wanted to pass it along, you go through the normal tax loophole. You go over the normal tax hurdles. You got to jump those. But there was an additional tax that was added in there. It's called the death tax, and it just fleeced everybody. Anyone that your surviving family members, it fleeced them. And what the Trump tax bill did is it got rid of that. It said no more death tax. repealed it. So now if you want to keep your family farm in the family, you can without that third or fourth level of extra overtaxation that just penalizes you and your family because you died. And this really helped the family farms. Well, Senator Klobuchar voted against that. And I point that out every chance I get. And it's just, it really rubs sand or salt in the wound. And folks are seeing some short-term right now with the Trump tax cuts. If you're not a business owner, if you're not a job provider, you're not seeing a whole lot right now. But the folks, I mean, you're seeing more in your pocket when you get paid because they're taking less out. But the job providers, you know, as they give these bonuses and such, they're the ones that are really seeing it now. But where you're really going to see it is when folks sit down to do their taxes next winter. When they sit down, come February, March, and like me, if you're like me, it's like the second week of April when you're doing your taxes. You're gonna be absolutely in for a just such a wonderful surprise. Just that the standard deduction alone doubled. People are going to be getting a ton of money back, and it's just going to be. I just wish that the election was during tax time.
Yeah.
Because we'd win in a landslide. The Republicans would win in a landslide every year if the elections were held during tax season. But suffice to say, the Trump tax cuts just keep blessing us more and more, and it hasn't stopped yet. So the tax bill, you know, Klobuchar voted against it, and I would have voted for it. I just embrace that tax bill. I think it's beautiful. But getting into health care as well, Senator Klobuchar has been a huge champion for Obamacare. She fought for it, got it into law. She was one of these people right before Obamacare became the law of the land, Ed. There was as they were going through the final cycle in the Senate, all these final amendments and stuff. There was an amendment that came up, and it was Rand Paul, I believe, offered the amendment that said, if your state's already doing a good job, if you're taking care of your people, you can opt out. You don't have to have Obamacare. She voted no. In one fell swoop, she voted on behalf of 5.5 million Minnesotans and said, whatever you got right now, you're going to lose it.
Yep.
We're all going into this exchange system. She basically threw all of us, single-handedly, threw us all under the bus. And I've called her out on that. As a state representative, Ed, I've had so many constituents tell me, why do we even have insurance now? Because in the past, before they got rid of the individual mandate, even now, their premiums some are paying more than $1,000 a month. After you pay your co-pays and your deductible, some folks are paying $15,000, $20,000. And they call me up and they said, Jim, what's the point in having insurance? What's the point? I can't even afford the upfront cost before the company even kicks in a nickel. What's the point in having this? And I say, you're right. And I say, thank Senator Klobuchar, because she's the one that gave that to you.
That's right.
She's the one that forced you into this. And not only that, she wants to redo it and do this Medicare for all. $32 trillion cost for this. $32 trillion. Where are we going to pay for that? We can't afford that. But the big danger, and I pointed this out in the debate last night, is that if you currently have insurance, if you're currently on Medicare, if you currently get VA benefits, you're going to lose it. Everyone will lose their insurance. Everyone. Because it's Medicare for all. And all of us will get jammed into this one big government program. It's not going to work.
Right.
Senator Klobuchar she's on this primrose path that's just not going to work.
Well, the other part of that, too, is that people who are on Medicare are on it for a reason, right? I mean, first off, Medicare more or less crowded out insurance for anybody that's at retirement age or older anyway, so it's the only option now for those people. And for people who are disabled, like my wife is disabled and she's on Medicare. And so that allows her to access care fairly easily because it's a limited number of people that are in that system. If you throw everybody in that system, it's going to be like the Medicaid expansion, which actually had the perverse outcome of making care more difficult to access for the people that Medicaid was originally supposed to be helping, which are the truly poor among us.
Yes.
And by throwing a bunch of people in there who had much higher utilization rates and were eating up much more of the available provider bandwidth, if you want to call it that. And the same thing's going to happen with Medicare. You're going to force providers out because people just aren't really going to want to do this work for the type of compensation that they're going to be receiving. But also, again, the people who are accepting Medicare are going to wind up being very, very busy with people who really didn't need to be on it in the first place. It's the reason why we had private insurance. And yeah, I'm
Right.
very frustrated by this, Jim, and I'm so glad that you're addressing this, because this is a big deal. And I'm curious as to what Amy Klobuchar's response to this was last night.
Her response was Obamacare was a good thing because everyone got insurance. Everyone became insured. I came up for air. It was like, no, everyone didn't get insurance. Everyone was forced into a big government program, and if you didn't comply, you got penalized with penalties up to thousands of dollars. And you were forced to get a one-size-fits-all type of program. In one fell swoop, they got rid of the underwriting industry. If your job was an insurance underwriter, guess what? Unemployed.
Yep.
Because underwriters sit down and they write insurance policies individually tailored for people as they buy insurance. They were all gone, out of work, no more underwriting.
Yep.
And the point being is that Senator Klobuchar didn't answer the question when it came to this whole Medicare issue, because right now, if we go to a Medicare for all system, your local hospitals, the little regional ones, those little ones that are in smaller towns and smaller communities, they're gone. They will not survive.
Yeah.
Because right now, Medicare does not pay the entire bill if you go to the hospital. The hospital has to take whatever Medicare gives them. That was the agreement with the government. And they make up for the loss through private insurance providers.
That's correct.
If we go to a Medicare, yes, and if we go to a Medicare for all system, I've spoken to medical administrators, and they've told me, they've said, Jim, if we go to Medicare for all, there will be no more small hospitals. You'll have to go to a big city, to a big urban center, a big factory-style system, and that's all you'll have for you. You know what? That's what they're doing in Canada.
Yep.
I'm telling you, Ed, we cannot let this happen. Senator Klobuchar needs to be defeated because she is the #1 champion in the U.S. Senate for this. Next to Bernie Sanders.
Next to Bernie Sanders. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jim. Well, we're almost out of time, and I know you're busy because you're busy putting those 400 miles plus on your car today. But where can people go to find out more about your campaign, how to help, and how to spread the word about Jim Newberger's campaign against Amy Klobuchar this year?
Well, thanks. My website's real easy. It's Jim. Simply, it's just Jim for USSenate.com, and it's FOR Jim for USSenate.com. And they can go to my website, hop on there. There's all kinds of stuff where I stand on issues and how they can help out. We got to raise some money. That's the bottom line. We're doing it on a shoestring, but I'm telling you, this is one tough shoestring. we could hang 1,000-pound weight off of it. We're doing really well with it. But at the end of the day, we still got to have that shoestring, and we are making progress like no one had ever seen.
Well, Jim Newberger, thank you so much for being with us today, and good luck. Jim4USSenate.com, Jim4USSenate.com is where you can find Jim Newberger's campaign. I'm Ed Morrissey of HotAir.com. We'll be back with more later.